Hello, I'm Kathy Bissell. Welcome to the Golf Show 2.0. Today, we're going to find out if all of that golf stuff that you have packed away in your garage and your attic is worth anything. Gary, why don't you take it from here? Introduce our guest.
Well, I already know the answer to mine. All my stuff is worthless. But since we've got two prestigious, esteemed members of the Golf Heritage Society today, I had to fight the urge to type my name in on the screen as Gary Van Collectable.
Oh, I think you should have.
That would be a non sequitur. Doesn't really make sense. But we've got Bernard Bernacki, president of the GHS, and George Petro, at-large director. Bern, why don't you give us a quick recap of it? This group used to be known as the Golf Collector Society, and it's really not about collecting and buying and selling. It's more about preserving history and that kind of thing. So tell us about the name change and why this is and what the group does now and why that name changes. The name is better now.
Very good. Well, first of all, Kathy and Gary, thanks so much for having us as part of the show. We hope that we can present some content that's useful for your listeners. But anyway, the Golf Collector Society started 52 years ago. Two gentlemen, a ball collector and club collector, and then a book collector, one in Dayton and one in Philadelphia, got together. And this grew. The interest of collectibles grew, and they became a group in its height of about 2,000 people. Of course, there was a lot of industry contacts in there too. And currently we're 1,000 people who are really dedicated to understanding and preserving the traditions of the game. And these collectibles are really an important part. So when you're holding an artifact, the people, places, events, and artifacts tell the story of the game of golf. And it's so cool to hang out with people who understand the history behind a golf club, a ball, a book, and really give you detailed, in-depth information all about it. And that's really the fellowship that the Golf Heritage Society brings and is worthwhile for growing membership.
George, when we were talking before we got going, you mentioned how golf has also ruined your life like it's ruined ours. Of course, we're joking, but we're not joking. Tell us about your addiction with the game.
Well, exactly. I'm just a born collector. And so, I've collected many things, start with rocks and minerals and then moved on to all kinds of other things. And then when I went to an antique show and saw golf clubs and paintings and things sitting on the table, it was like, wait a minute, why am I collecting those things? I should be collecting golf. And from there, it just took off. And then, I made so many friends and expanded my collection. They tell you to start to be very specific with your collecting, but I was just a generalist, but I'm glad I was. And so then as I moved on, I picked and focused in various areas, and just the friendships and the relationships and the collecting itself. As Bern said, holding history in your hand, like almost every item has a story. And so if you're interested in golf history in a passing way, that's okay. But once you own something, then you research it to the hilt, and then it really makes the history come alive. So it did ruin my life because I spent all of my income on collecting.
I always have a tough time at golf tournaments trying to decide whether or not to keep the program or to, have it collecting dust in my office or to toss it out. And I think probably anything that I have from we'll call the semi-modern era is probably not collectible now, but if somebody hangs on to it for another 50 years, maybe it will be.
Well, from my point of view, just to add to that, it's really what it means to you. So it's not always the intrinsic value. Some of my favorite things are things that have very little value, but so it all depends on what it means to you.
That was also my approach to the stock market. A lot of the stocks I have, really, I liked them, but they really wound up having very little value. Thanks a lot, World Com. Bern, you've got before we talk about some specific things that might have value, you have a big convention every year. It's coming up, you give me the dates, but it's in Indianapolis this year. And is it open to the public? Do you have to be a member? When and where is it?
Well, we were in Indianapolis in 22, and we had a wonderful time.
Oh, it's in Louisville this year.
We're going to be in Lexington.
Lexington, thank you. Okay, I was real close.
Home of Gabe Brewer, a Masters winner and a winner of 12 other PGA events. So we're highlighting Gabe Brewer. We have the last couple of years created a coin. Last year in Indianapolis, Alice and Pete Dye were the subject of the coin, and it is very cool collectible. This will be year 3 we're doing it, so Gabe Brewer we think will be the subject. But we will be in October 12, 13, 14 in Lexington, and it'll be a great time. We always have a golf event or two. People play modern golf, but they also play their collectibles with the antique golf clubs. And some folks have opted to play their classic clubs from the Palmer, Nicklaus, and Player era. So we do all these things. We have a Hall of Fame induction banquet, which is really something. It's always touching with people that give back to the society for so many years. And we have a trade show where we have probably 100, 120 tables of people interacting with each other. And times I've spent money, other times I've just gone around the room and learned about different collectibles from some of our folks who are considerably knowledgeable.
Bern, is that trade show open to the public?
The trade show is open to the public. The program that we have for members is educational and entertaining. That is for the members, and that is for the fee, for the attendance. We've been collecting a lot of our materials on our Zooms and other things that we do, programming, and put it on our website so we can retrieve it later, and our members can participate even at a later date. So these are benefits of our membership, and our way to sign up for us is golfheritage.org. That is our website. You can sign up immediately or do a paper download and mail us a check for $50. $50 a year. It's probably the best deal in the game of golf.
George, how many rooms in your house are necessary for your gear?
That's exactly right. Brief story. I recently moved, and I explained to my partner that I needed a 4-bedroom house because I needed at least 2 rooms. And what she found out was those rooms were the living room and dining room. So that's where all of my collection is. And the foyer. So.
Oh, wait, and you got away with that?
It was too late. Absolutely. I did get away with it. So there is a dining room table, with, a lot of things laid out, and the shelves that would have been for, glassware and things are all collectibles.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you have cases and whatnot. I know, having lived in the Corning, New York area for a while, there was a department store, the name of which I can't remember now, but you could go up to the top floor of the department store, and they had almost floor to ceiling cabinets of one person's glass collection. It was completely amazing. It was just
that's one
astonishing.
Exactly.
That's wonderful, did you say?
That's one of the fun things about collecting is displaying, organizing, displaying, make your own story, grouping items. I mean, that just makes it fun. So that's an integral part of what you do with your collection. I used to keep things under the bed and in the closet because I said, save my money for more items. Then I find that it's time to display and buy those cabinets, but you don't have to. Use whatever you want. And that's why you can collect large items. So you need more rooms, or you can decide to collect balls and metals and smaller things. It gives you more room. So it's all fun.
Bern, what's your favorite thing to collect? What do you have the most of?
Those are two different questions. I have a lot of golf clubs because I furnish golf clubs to our first tee kids in some of our PGA Junior League kids so that they have an experience of playing authentic equipment from the turn of the century and in the 30s. So I really enjoy that. But I also have, a few bookshelves, to the point that George made. You sometimes will replace things and have sort of like my good stuff, my sort of stuff, and it changes when you upgrade. So this is for your audience. There's really three kinds of collectibles. Everybody's tuned into the Tiger Woods golf clubs that sold for a lot of money. So they had historic value and economic value. And George alluded to that golf pencil collection for everywhere you ever played, or the scorecard where you first played with your parents, or the collection of ball markers from every U.S. Open that you attended. These are fun things that you do. And then there's this third category that I like. It's just sort of interesting things. And if we have a minute, I'd just like to show you one example of an interesting thing. Are you guys game for that?
Sure.
So when you're in an antique store or, any old place, a yard sale, you might find something that catches your eye. And I'm going to hold this into the camera and hope that it'll transmit pretty well. And it's a very simple pewter-like kind of hand sculpted figurine. And it's a young lady standing next to a golf bag. And it has significant detail to it, to the point of her ponytail in the back is just absolutely stunning. And the golf clubs in the back, as you can make them out, are pretty cool as well. And on the back, it has Hunter. And I don't know if Hunter is the subject or if Hunter is the artist, but who cares? It is such a cool little thing. And I take pictures of it, and my granddaughters especially, think it's really a neat item.
What are that pewter golfer's preferred pronouns?
It and they.
Okay. George, what are, let me ask you one thing about what people might have that would have some value. Let's start with the generic topic of golf trading cards. And I'm going to hold one up, but I guess my question is, do any PGA Tour golf trading cards going back to the 70s, are any of them have any value? And I've got in my hand here the coveted Brandel Chamblee rookie card from 1990. You see, and here's the back. Here's Brandel. Yeah, Brandel's wearing pleated big pants. Are any trading cards really worth anything?
They absolutely are. Beyond sticking in the spokes of your bicycle, beyond that, there is still value. It's interesting you held up that card. I bought the full deck of that, all cards, for about $50 sealed this weekend at our show.
Really?
And I'm going to open it up and find out the condition, because, the value you asked is about two things: who the player is, the condition of the card, but it's so important to be most often their rookie card. And if you can identify what their rookie, the first time they appeared on an official card, that elevates it to the new level. So if your card is not a rookie card, it's not worth very much. It's personally what you want to put in it. But if it turns out to be a rookie card, then you look at the condition. And a lot of people are getting these things graded now, which by various, PSA and Beckett's and all these various things. And, that greatly, that allows people to understand what you have. But condition certainly matters. But if you go back to old Tom Morris, his rookie card is in the 1900 Copes series of cards. And so the condition can be horrible, but it might still be worth $5,000. But the 1901 Ogden's card, I'm getting off in the weeds a little bit, that might only be worth a couple of $100 in better condition, because it's not his rookie card. So that's how people have created rarity by, is it your rookie card? One, is it signed? That's an option. And then condition. And condition.
Yeah, you have to outlast everybody. wait for everybody else over 50 years to throw their crap away when they move. I did notice, I checked out Brandel's card online. Its asking price on eBay is 99 cents. And it was not taken. So
speaking of eBay, this is a real life story from last week. One of our members and I were talking about his card collection, and he has had it for a long time and didn't know what kind of a collection he had. So recently, in the week, he was sizing up a collection, and he bought it kind of like George bought, and he added it to his collection. Then he had it valued, and he sent me an email yesterday that said, things worked out pretty well. I now have the 13th rated golf card collection in the world.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. He went from not being on the top 100 list to number 13 with a recent purchase. He paid money, but he paid money for quality and to build his collection. So he was just ecstatic because that's his collectible and that's what he likes to do.
I didn't know there were world rankings for golf card collections. Amazing.
I have to ask you guys a question because I remember the year when the PGA Tour did an official card collection for all of its players. And it seems to me it was sometime in the late 80s. Mm-hmm. And it could have been early 90s, maybe the year that Brandel came out.
Yeah, they were out before that. I think wasn't there one in the 70s, George?
That's correct.
I was going to say, I don't remember ever seeing them have collecting cards after that. Right. But maybe there are someplace.
Yeah, the main collecting card is the 1981 Donruss series that had about 40 or so cards, and then the statistical leaders. So that's Nicklaus's rookie card. There are some obscure cards that may or may not get qualified as your true rookie, but that 1981 Donruss series came out. And so recently, a perfect 10, and the ultimate 10 is called the Black Label Beckett's 10. That's one of them, where the corners are 10, the edges are 10, the surface is 10. That went for $27,000 out of that set. Now I have a 9, maybe 200.
Wow.
Maybe 200, because there is a ranking, because it's like a coin. You can have a 1909 SVDD penny, which is like the set everybody wants, but you judge the quality if it's a perfect grade. So cards are the same way. So there are very few of these graded cards, and the systems you can submit an entire collection, as Bern mentioned, and be rated. And as more people do that, you move up or down the list. So it's kind of.
I had no idea.
As a writer, I've been berated many times. I've also got an unopened pack of the 1992 PGA Tour cards, which I'm sure is probably worth at least 15 or 20 cents. So that's kind of interesting. I don't even know where that came from. Let me ask. Let's move into the. I've got this book at one time was very valuable. I don't know if this one is. It's the Tom Doak's original Tour Confidential, where he goes through and wrote about a lot of courses, and oh my heavens, was critical of some courses. It was quite the thing at the time. I don't remember. This was mid 90s. What's the story on Tom Doak, and tell us about maybe any semi-modern books that might have any value.
Well, there's so many categories. I can't tell you specifically about that book just because there are so many as far as value and things, but there's the whole architectural category. So now you decide, you mentioned the word modern, and there are a bunch of modern ones, and some of the members of the society are architects and writers. You can go way back to C.B. MacDonald, who wrote Scotland's Gift. Well, that's architectural. And then Tillinghast and Ross and Mackenzie, who designed Augusta. And if you get a signed C.B. MacDonald, that's $15,000 signed. So, but modern ones, $30-$40 by the book. They're incredible. And so there's a whole category because people love clubs, balls, golf courses, architectural. So there's so many categories. And so that's a book I'd hang on to. I haven't read that particular one, so I can't make a comment, though he's obviously very famous.
Well, I remember that at some point early on, because it wasn't printed and I could be wrong here, but what I remember was they didn't print a lot of copies. And I saw that somewhere it was going for like $2,000, which maybe there was a special edition or something. I don't think that's mine, but I thought that was weird. You mentioned Augusta, so here's my master's clock.
There you go.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, I should have brought. I've got a master's dog dish. I put it online. Nobody wanted it. Couldn't believe it. What dog doesn't need a logoed bowl to eat its dinner out of? I mean, I think every dog is into logos.
I think so.
Kathy,
absolutely. Huh?
I'd like to tell stories about our members, as you've kind of guessed. And on the subject of books and clubs, we have a couple of members who write club histories, and they're really pretty good at it. And these books keep coming out. And I found out last week when we were at the Golf Course Superintendents Association meeting that a couple of these books, as they come out, they're just being gobbled up by the collectors of club histories, especially the clubs that are 100 plus years old. So these are being the histories written, preserving the history, and it's just wonderful. I will mention Strawn, John Strawn, who's been in the architectural business for a long time, is now participating with these club histories. So it's a connection to history. The members love it, and people in the know who follow the architecture. So Gary's question early was, well, tell us about the diversity of interest in golf. Well, there's photography, there's architecture, there's all the implements connected to the early maintenance of a golf course. There's so many collectibles, but there's also the writings of about all these wonderful areas where we enjoy the game of golf. It's fantastic.
That's true. Pretty much everything I've written is totally collectible.
I remember doing some work for the Hall of Fame in I guess it's in transition now. But it was either before it opened or when it was in the process of opening, and they were looking for oldest golf clubs in certain areas. And so I communicated with the people at those clubs, and to get them to loan a book that was their history was really an ordeal for them. So we had to make sure it was sent FedEx so they could track it. And then I had to make copies of the pages that were of interest to me for whatever the project ended up being, and I don't even remember at this point, and then send the book back to them so that they would feel secure that it was going to be returned in good condition, which of course it was. But once those things are printed, they don't get printed again and again and again. So to try and find one, you have to get one from a member or some other way, because there's a limited number that get done.
While we're on the subject of books, that book that I mentioned, Mike Hersden, who very prominent designer,
got his own museum in Columbus there.
I was at his museum Thursday night, because we also have a winter show, which we do it used to be in Dayton, but it's now in Columbus. And I was at his museum, and he held up that very book C.B. MacDonald signed. He said he paid $8 in a bookstore in New York City. It's been a few years, but that's a $15,000 book. But before I leave books, just so the viewers might want to know, the first mention of golf, because I'm an origins guy, so I like it all, but the origins and the evolution of the game is really important to me. So the first mention of the word golf, which was spelled G-O-F-F, not G-O-L-F, was in 1457 when they banned golf. Yeah. And so it's called the Acts of Parliament. They hand wrote it, but they eventually made a book of it. So that's 1457. They banned golf. Then the very first book devoted entirely to golf is called The Golf, G-O-F-F, 1743. So there aren't many copies. Very hard to find. So that could be 50 to 100 grand. So that's pretty special.
There's one.
Talk about the modern version of the golf, George.
Exactly. That's
This
the
is our
modern
turn.
version. Then, I mean, just to take it a little bit further, the first golf history book was called The Rules of the Thistle Club. It had rules of golf, but most of the book is about the history of golf. And you can imagine this is written in 1824, so it goes all the way back. So that's a very rare book. That's the first golf history book. And finally, I'll mention the book of golf instruction was called The Manual of Golf, 1857. So there are those kinds of books that you can collect. That's the early history. And then it just keeps growing. Golf history, instruction, players, courses. It's all collectible. It's fun. And books are the basis of knowing what you know about collectibles.
Well, it's funny. I've also got a golf ball that Bernard Bernacki used to use, and he hit it so hard that, as you can see, it's no longer remotely round.
That's unique.
A wound ball.
Did you sign that for him, Bernard?
Here's the set that Nike put out when Tiger put out these collectible tins of dozen golf balls. They made one when he had the Grand Slam. They made a dozen for each of his 4 majors, and they put them in their own collectible tin. And this has been sitting in a shelf here at my house since 2000. So, hey, another 50 years.
Right.
I'm going to sell this and cash in, baby.
Some stuff you'd be surprised. I was just talking to a person at the show, because another big thing that people might have in their basement, their closet, could be some old photographs. And if those old photographs are of interesting subjects, and I mean, something that might be kind of historic, but you got a picture, a snapshot of Bobby Jones in an early Masters. I mean, those things can be incredible. So this particular dealer, because we have dealers and collectors at our shows, so I mentioned how he sold a photo not long ago for $500 of Bobby Jones at the early Masters. Just a little snapshot. It was maybe 5 by 7 inches, and sold for $87,000 recently. So,
oh my God.
So I would recommend to people, if you have old photos and they're original photos, take a look. I'm doing the same thing.
So
Kathy mentioned tournament programs. Is there any value there? How far do you have to go back? Here's an 89 Ryder Cup program, for instance. How far back do you have to go before those start getting valuable? I'm sure farther than 89.
It's not how far back you have to go. It's who won that year and at what course. So if you can take a 1930 Bobby Jones program, and that's a $5,000-$10,000 program. Now the 1931 program might be worth $200.
Yeah.
You can have like I have thinking it might be something, a 1996 U.S. Amateur program, very recent, but that's Tiger's 3rd in a row. So all of a sudden that's getting close to $1,000. So, but 1997, not so much.
Sounds like maybe all those media guides I have that Tiger was on the cover of, they might have some interest.
I'm looking at my bookshelf, wondering if I've got anything up there.
Well, there's no end. You guys said it.
Yeah.
We can all, I'm a golfer. I'm a golf addict. I've been guilty of getting hooked on buying shirts because of the logos, but there's so many items you can get hooked on. I mean, the ball markers. I know there's people who collect tees. I've got, just because the pencils are too good to throw away, I've got 3 shoe boxes of golf pencils that I had no intention of collecting, but I feel like these are nice little pencils. I don't want to, I don't want to toss them out. So there's no end.
I'm going to reach for something. I'm going to reach for something.
And while you're doing that, I'll tell you about something that's back on my wall here. I don't know if we can even see it. This one?
Yeah.
Yes.
That is a copy of the Ryder Cup dinner program from the Ryder Cup that didn't happen in 1939. Someone here in Ponte Vedra had an original copy, and so I wrote a story about it. And I copied their program and gave it back to them, of course. And that one was not held because there were U-boats out in the Atlantic, and everybody was afraid to cross over for fear of getting blown up.
That's kind of a weak excuse.
Yeah.
Somebody here in Ponte Vedra has the original, and they're signed by, let's see, Gene Sarrazin, Leo Frazier, Craig Wood, and some other people.
Yeah. What's interesting about that, when it was canceled, can't quote me exactly, they decided to still have some event and then use it to raise money for the war effort. So in America, so they took the players, some of the players that would have been in the Ryder Cup, and did a Walter Hagen team against the Bobby Jones team. And they're signed and very, very valuable. So yeah, time to investigate more closely.
Well, maybe that's what this was. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, Kathy was part of Landmark Land, and you were part of that Ryder Cup that didn't get played at La Quinta. Do you still have any items from that? The one that was moved to Kiowa?
Not in La Quinta. There was one. The 1991 Ryder Cup was supposed to be played at PGA West.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what I meant.
And when that happened, Landmark would distribute shirts to media people. So I was there handing out the shirts to a bunch of golf writers. And so there may be someone who has a Ryder Cup 1991 PGA West shirt still in their closet. And then the Ryder Cup, of course, was held at Kiowa Island. That was the War by the Shore. And I have very few things from that, but I have the remnants of the back of a jacket. I just cut out the back of the logo thing because the jacket had been washed and the colors all bled and stuff, so there wasn't any point in keeping the jacket. I probably should have kept the jacket, bleeding colors and all, but I didn't.
Well, we haven't really talked about clubs. I've got something here. It's a Cleveland wedge. It's the Byron Nelson's 50th that Cleveland put out probably in the early 90s. Never really been used. I know you can't really see that too well. I would think probably collectible golf clubs have got to go way back before that to be, unless there was some incredible ownership story, or I guess they need to be owned by the right people, George. You know, it needs to be owned by, if you had Byron's actual wedge, that would probably be pretty good versus a commemorative edition from the early 90s.
Exactly. As Bern mentioned, irons purportedly used by Tiger for a couple of his majors went for $5 million, and some of his putters that he didn't use, but that he's just signed, that Scotty Cameron made for him. But it is true. You can take a big field right now is Scotty Cameron putters that don't necessarily have been touched or played by anybody, but they have turned that. Like I have a couple. I was a horrible putter. I finally think I've learned a little bit, but so I've had 2 or 3 Scotties along the way, and now people are collecting those left and right, and they're going for all kinds of sums. And one of the ones that I used, if it were in mint condition, I mean, I threw it a few times, so it's not in mint condition anymore. But that could be $2,000 if I kept the head cover and kept it in mint condition. But so clubs go all the way back to the long nose clubs, used from the beginning of time up into the 1880s, 90s. Then they transitioned to thicker heads so they could hit the harder gutty balls. And there are a lot of patent clubs, which everybody had a new idea of what would make the ball go further, work better. And there are 100, and those clubs are so interesting. The designs, the adjustability, the faces with spring faces, wooden faces, hinges, special steel before steel shafts were allowed. So the collecting world is awesome. So there are modern ones, and it's amazing though that a lot of the very interesting things are affordable and just tell the history. So it's
there is one, isn't there, that they used to get out of if your ball landed in a wagon rut? It's actually called a rut iron.
It's almost a mistake that you asked that, because I've written several articles on the rut or track iron, and it's a tiny, it's got a head no bigger than a golf ball with a little cup face. And if the feather ball, at that time it was feather ball era pre-1850, Yeah, because they used to drive carts across the golf courses. This was links land, meaning it linked from the ocean, the sea, to the mainland, and that in between sandy area with grass growing on it was links land. But people would go to and from the beach, collect seaweed, do their whatever they did, wagon ruts. So you would play golf in the same place, and you needed this little club to get the ball out of those impossible lies, because you play it as it lies in those days.
Well, I've got a question for each of you guys. Meanwhile, I suspect Kathy's going to put up our usual shameless plug in our quest to get enough viewers. Please subscribe. Please click like. Nothing will happen to you. But if enough of you do this, our goal is to make 17 cents from this podcast. I know we aim high. So here's the tough question for you guys. Bern, George, start with Bern. You have to get rid of everything in your golf collection that you have except one item. Oh. What's the one thing that means the most to you that you would keep? What's the one thing you could not part with?
There are three of them, but the one that you have to pry out of my cold dead hand.
That's the one.
Yeah, it is a replica driving wood, a spoon made by Mike Just of Louisville Golf. And my first experience to Oakhurst, 1884, for the National Hickory Championship, to play a smooth face, gutty ball, no bags, carry them under your arm, golf experience. I took 5 clubs with me. And I played, I submitted them to Pete Georgety, and he disqualified 2 of them immediately. So my first round at Oakhurst was, you're laughing because you know Pete, was with a mashie niblick and a putter, and I shot a 62.
Wow.
And Mike Just said, "Bern, you got game." Took me to his truck, pulled out this wood and said, "Bern, you're going to need something off the tee tomorrow. Try this. You like it, you buy it. You don't like it, throw it in the truck." Well, I liked it. I did okay. It wasn't about that. It was playing with Pete Georgety and Mike Just. And I played that same club with Mike Just as an American against the Canadians up at Niagara on the Lake. And I hit a club, a shot on 16, and it went right and short. And I hit it again on 17, and it went further right and further short. And Mike Just said, "Bern, shame on me. I should have not let you hit that club." He took it and went like this, and it split right down the shaft. He says, "I'm going to take that club. I'm going to fix it. And I know your swing, and it'll be fine." So he did, and he gave it back to me. And we've lost Mike Just about 4 years ago. That club, with all the experiences that are in it, tied to Mike Just, one of our most famous members of the Golf Collectors and Golf Heritage Society, makes it very, very dear to me.
Yep, you said it. Every item has a story. George, you got to get rid of it. You can only keep one thing. What's it going to be?
Okay. The reason it's going to be this, okay. I collect everything, but I developed this focus on medals, winners' medals for events. And fairly early in my collecting, I was able to acquire a U.S. Open winners medal. And that got me started on collecting medals. So my favorite medal, and that makes this top of the line, the winner of the 1897 U.S. Open, his name was Joe Lloyd. And Joe Lloyd played at Varden in Britain. He wasn't up at Varden's level, but he came to America and in the summertime and would teach Americans how to play golf in the 1890s. And so he entered the U.S. Open, and he won the 1897 U.S. Open. It's a beautiful medal, long ribbon, gold bar with a pin, ribbon, gold bar, U.S. Open Championship, big medal at the bottom, 1897. The Japanese were huge into collecting in the late 1980s. I always say 18s because that's where my mind is, 1800s, but 1980s. And they bought this thing and took it to Japan. And luckily, and I I was trying to buy the thing. It took me 25 years to buy it, and I finally got a hold of it. Went to an auction in Britain in 2000, and so that's my favorite piece. And the USGA really wants it, and someday it's going to go there. But right now, that's where it is. That'd be hard to part with.
I bet. Kathy, I'll go ahead and ask you too. You've probably picked up some items right after the Civil War that you enjoy. What have you got that you couldn't bear to part with?
I can't think. I'm to the point in my life where I'm starting to throw things out. So I have a bunch of pins that I purchase at golf tournaments, and you have seen me where I have a denim jacket that has so many pins on it that I almost fall over from the weight of them. But I would like to not lose those.
Well, try not to. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure hearing the stories. There's a million stories in the Naked City, and these have been some of them.
Some of them.
So thanks
Thank
for
you very
chiming in
much.
today. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming to the Golf Show 2.0.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.